when these other ones, when you press the other ones, it shows you the raw key codes, but the inner key only sometimes does it. You see, so it's not reliable. And the other key that doesn't seem to work is the right Amiga key. Today in the lab, we're going to be working on my Amiga 4000D keyboard, getting it all nice and clean and functional. So, unfortunately, while I was filming this video, I had some audio issues, and it's going to flip back between overdubbed audio like this and audio from my camera. Hope that's not too distracting. So enough about that. Let's get started working on this keyboard. Luckily, all the keycaps are intact, and there's no cracking or anything like that on the actual case. It's all in pretty good shape. The cable's in pretty good shape. So, I think it's just a tear down, wash everything, and reassemble it. All right, here we are starting keyboard disassembly. So, there were 6 screws holding the main shell together, the top and the bottom part, and then the actual attachment, which was very nice, had a connector and then a ground pin. The ground pin was screwed in, so relatively easy to disassemble. No need to solder anything just yet. And now I'm using my handy dandy keyboard puller to pull out all the keys. Now, apologize for the grossness, good lord, but I wanted to show some of the more interesting keys on here that aren't just simple, using the tool here to pull them up, and that's generally any of the long keys. So I try and be pretty careful with this on these kind of keyboards, right? Yeah, I should film this after I've cleaned up everything. But as you can see, this is a space bar, obviously. But there are these plastic clips like this that hook into these metal bars that kind of act as stabilizers. So the space bar, on the space bar, both sides of this this little bar here slot into holes in these and right here on these add-ons, and that kind of provides stabilization, and also on the space bar there are 2 springs right there and right there that also provide that, because space bar is a really long key. And that kind of pattern is duplicated on some of the other long keys here. So I'm always kind of careful when I pull these up. On the return key, good lord, I couldn't be. And you can see the return key actually has 2 sets of these, and they actually pulled out from the key. Now I'm gonna have to look at them closely, but I don't think I broke them, because they're meant to they're actually a separate part from the. Let me clean this off a little bit for its close-up. They're actually a separate part from the key itself that fits in there. But I still like to be kind of ginger when I pull these up, because I really don't want to break them. Although in the case of the spacebar here, like I couldn't help it. Or not the spacebar, the return key. Which, all of this gunk around here is probably why it wasn't doing right, because I was having trouble there. Now, on these keys, my technique generally is to hook a regular size key like this and just pull straight up, and that works. The other one that I haven't pulled up yet, which are due here in a cut, is the caps lock, and the caps lock is different. because of that little light there. And I think what I'll find once I get in there is that there's a spring instead of one of these collars, providing the springiness. So we'll see. Alright, there I was correct. There's a spring underneath the caps lock. And that's just because the LED and the collar might interfere with one another, so they put a spring under here just to make sure that little light lights up correctly. Alright, so I blew, this is the back side obviously, but I blew most of the dust out that I could. I'm actually hoping I can remove this entire black layer and wash it individually. Honestly, that would be best. We'll see. I'm not quite sure. I haven't seen any teardown videos of this. But now, to try and get at the contact surface, I'm going to remove all of these little screws here, and which I think are going to hold the black part and the PCB together, hopefully. So this is a bunch of screws, and going to remove all of them here, and then we're well, this is as much documentation for myself as it is for other people. Remove all these and then see what's next. Okay, after removing all of those screws and one little screw here in the corner, so all the screws on the back and then this one here in the corner, I was able to pull the black part off of the underlying PCB. And it's interesting to see how these things work and where everything is, because essentially, one of them stuck in here, but you've got these little doodads that sit on top of PCB pads. So, I guess those are what you would call the stems, maybe? I don't know. But they're just on there. They're not actually attached to, not physically attached. So we can look at ones like this is where return should be. And some of these look like they're a little gummy. So I'm gonna, yeah, there's like crud underneath them. Maybe the pads aren't making good connections. I don't know. But, now that this is kind of out like this, we can do some more deep cleaning. I'm going to investigate what the best way is to clean these stems, and then maybe use some deoxide rubbing alcohol on the board itself. And you can see where like there were holes around the space bars socket that allowed gunk to get in here, and then it's also kind of migrated to other parts of the board. Oops. Yeah, see, like that's a little gunky underneath there. One last interesting bit about this is on the bottom of this says Frame A2000. Now I know this style of keyboard switch was used in some Amiga 2000 keyboards, notably later ones. Not the ones that I have. The ones that I have are all what they call Space Invaders type keycaps, which operate fundamentally differently. But makes me wonder if basically the only difference between all the different kinds of Amiga keyboards that use Mitsumi is just the outside case. That would actually make a lot of sense if that were the case, as it were. Alright, so we're here in the annex to the lab, called the kitchen, amongst the bread and the squash. Not usually a lot of computer stuff going on here, except for, stealth computers, but always listening to that one. Anyhow, so washing these keys and these components and all that in just lukewarm water and soap, dish soap, what I'd use to clean my regular dishes. That'll dissolve most of the gunk that was on here, and in fact these are pretty much clean here, and I've got a little brush, toothbrush, well, this is an anti-static brush, but you can use a toothbrush, to clean these all out. And then this that's really important is I want everything that I've washed with water, which is going to be basically all the plastic components, to be completely bone dry when I reassemble it. Back in the lab, and several days have elapsed. I've washed all the keys and all the rubber units, and they've had several days to sit in here in what is right now feeling kind of like a sauna, thanks to all these servers running, and dry out. So they've gotten real good and dry. And same thing with the I don't know what you would necessarily call this, but I'm going to call it the key holder, or the switch holder. I guess it's not really the switch holder. Anyhow, this big black piece of plastic, this has also been washed and left to dry. And what I've done preemptively, now you can see there's still some spots in there. I didn't really get in here and scrub this too deeply. I did go over it with soap quite a bit, but you know, just you know, a little bit of dust that's stuck here is, I think, okay, and not worth scrubbing it and breaking this, because then that would be a real tragedy. So I've put back in all of the plungers. I'm going to call these plungers, or the stalks, and these just fit in here one way. They're keyed, so you can't mess them up. So I've got all of these back in, including the two special ones, which was the caps lock and the inner, or the space bar. I don't actually know that the space bar is any different than these other ones, but it had a different colored plunger on it. Got the circuit board looking better. I went and took isopropyl alcohol and kind of rubbed over all of the carbon pads, make sure that they were clean. I cleaned a few spots where the where there was a hole in this black key holder, and it let grime get down in onto the board. Again, not perfectly clean, but I think good enough for my purposes. You know, there's still, now that I'm looking in the video, there's still some dust there. So now that, you know, this is all dry, I'm going to work to reassemble it, and then put the keys back on and then start testing it. Alright, so there it is, kind of back together. So I have all the plungers in there, and I made kind of a makeshift stand out of these photo canisters. Now the reason I did that, and actually I think this is kind of pretty important, is because if you have this black retainer sitting on a flat surface, it pushes these plungers up, and that makes it hard to put the board on. Now luckily this board has several guides that help get it into the right position, but if those keycaps are not down, and let me lift this up here to show what that looks like. Right, see, with this kind of makeshift stand, which I'm still having to be very careful about, it's kind of delicate. You can see that all the plungers are down. Gravity is holding them down to kind of the most extent there, and that makes it a lot easier to put the PCB back on. I tried this once where it was just sitting on the table, and so all of these were out. What that caused was some of them would get a little too far out, and it wouldn't make a secure fit. So something rigged up like this, pretty critical in my opinion. So a quick editor's note here. I forget to mention this in the video, and you can kind of see it in several places, but in addition to the key stalks that go down in this key holder, the LED assembly is also a separate component, and it slots right in where I've circled it. Continuing on with assembly here, my general strategy, and I wish I'd filmed this but I didn't, is to put the keys that have stabilizer bars on first, or so that's like space bar, shift, return, which has 2 of them, so it's kind of hard. Those are tricky to get in, and I didn't film it because it's hard to do one-handed. But you know, first I get the key connected to the bar again, and then I put the rubber spring in. So relatively straightforward thing to do here. You know, so you put the rubber string in, or the rubber spring, excuse me. Let's see, and I don't have 4 in front of me, so we'll do number 5. And then that stays there, actually, and that's pretty well stabilized there. And so then you kind of line the key up on top of it and just press gently. And the bottom of the keycap will engage with the plunger here. You shouldn't have to put a lot of pressure. It should just be a real gentle pressure, and then they should connect and, you know, be. So like I can pull on this and it doesn't come off. Yeah, and so like I say, do the ones with spacers, or the ones with stabilizing bars first. Then I did caps lock because it has a spring instead of a plunger, and then all the rest of them. And the reason I'm putting all these back before testing is because it makes dealing with this so much easier, and I think I'll show this later, but it essentially turns this right here, which has hundreds of parts, into basically 3 parts, right? You have this keyboard retainer with keys and plungers, you have the circuit board with the contacts on it, and then you have the metal plate, right? Because this now, after I remove the screws, you know, and were to take this apart again, all the plungers would stay attached to the keys, and they would all stay attached to this board. And it makes dealing with this a lot easier. I mean, it's very easy when these things aren't secured to like knock the table a little bit and then all your plungers go flying or all your keys go flying. Real pain. Then you start losing stuff or damaging it. Don't want to be doing that. One more tip, especially for keys that are, you know, difficult to distinguish from each other, right? The arrow keys in particular. I think most of the other ones have, you know, pretty recognizable symbols on them. But in case, you know, when looking at a key, the part that it should slope downwards towards the top of the keyboard. So if you're looking at a key like this, the taller part of the key should be towards closer towards you as you're looking towards the keyboard, and the shorter part should be towards the top. So that can really be helpful with keys that, like, which one's which, like for example the arrow keys. Now, I left my 2 Amiga keys for last because the keyboard I'm using for a model is an older Commodore Amiga 2000 keyboard, and instead of right Amiga, left Amiga, it has Commodore key and Amiga key. So, which one's which? Well, comparing this to the one that I have, black or filled in Amiga is left Amiga, and the other one is right Amiga. This is what I meant when I was talking about how once this is assembled, it becomes much easier to handle. When the keys are all in to this black key holder, it essentially becomes one big piece. Now the exception to this is the LED light that's not really firmly affixed in here, but that's just one extra part as opposed to, you know, hundreds of keys. Alright, we got pretty moderate success here. So this is all back assembled, powered on, and I've got Amiga test kit running. And let me escape out of this. Escape. Alright, it's control, left Amiga. Oh, control left out, excuse me. Control left out to go back to main menu. we'll go back into the keyboard, right? And so, you know, pretty much all of these keys now work, including left Amiga key, right Amiga key, and return key. And you know, after I reassembled it, I had to mess around with some of the keys, you know, just press them a couple, and that makes sure that them and the stalk are making good connection and all that, and that they're, you know, some of these took a couple key presses to really become good again. But, small problem, my Y key. My T key works good, my U key works good, but now my Y key is kind of spotty. So I went back and cleaned both the circuit board and the key stalk, the contacts on that, with isopropyl alcohol and a Q-tip, and gave extra attention to that and also some of the other contacts, and that seems to fix my issue. So I'm good to go. All the keys now work great on this keyboard. Alright, I've cleaned the cable, and I just used, again, warm soapy water with that. And it's a good thing I did, because there was some schmutz on there. The feet of the case that this keyboard belongs to, my Amiga 4000, the feet had turned into this real black goo. The rubber, I guess it's probably plastic material on the bottom, and there was some of that stuck to this. So, there's some capacitors on this keyboard that I've noted down what they are, but looking at them, they all look good, and you know, I don't have any extras in stock now to replace them, so I figure I'll just leave them on there right now, unless, you know, something starts acting funny again. These kind of capacitors here tend not to go, and like I said, they look pretty good. No bulging or anything like that. Alright, and there we have it. All fully reassembled and looking good. Thought it would be interesting to contrast what this one looks like with what one that has virtually no yellowing looks like. This is my keyboard I got with my Amiga 4000D, and I mostly just used my Amiga 2000 keyboard with the 4000D. So this one has basically lived in a box for all of its life until basically this year. So this is what this one originally looked like. It was probably about that same shade, and all that. So you can tell pretty big yellowing difference there, especially the space bar. The rest of the keys look pretty much okay, but that space bar is yellow. Anyhow, that's it. Thanks all for watching.